Hello. This week I'm going to take a look at this tank that I damaged the other week. Basically what I've thought about doing is a bit of a crossover piece really. In some ways you could argue that it's going to be a bit of a diorama, but that's not really what I'm aiming for it to be. I'm aiming for it to be a piece of scatter terrain as well. A piece of scatter terrain with an interest. So what I'm hoping to do, obviously I've drilled these holes for, potentially bazooka damage, and I've started patching up the tank. But basically I want to create a realistic place for it to have, kind of ran off the road and into the ditch. So that's what I'm going to create. So what I've done is I've grabbed out of my useful bin some, you can see, heavily used blue foam here that was from when I was making a river, and I used this as a base to lay it on when I was applying the plaster. But I can still get a meaningful piece out of this. So I've just basically grabbed a load of, scrap bits really that I'm going to use to do it. I've not got a set idea, but I know roughly what I want to achieve. So I suppose what I want is somewhere where the tank's been obviously driving down a well-trodden path, but then when it's been it's drifted and into the gully of the side of the road. So what I'm thinking is, what I need initially is something that slopes off in both directions, but allows the room for the road, which is, the flat surface on the top. I mean, it's not going to be a road as such, it's just going to be obviously a well-trod pathway through the snow that they've used. But I thought if I could cut a shape out similar to this. At the moment I don't know what size this is going to be, so I'm improvising really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Proxon to cut this shape out. Doesn't matter if it's perfect because I'm going to be working with it anyway, and we'll take it from there. So let me cut this piece out that I'm after, and then I'll bring it back to you. Right, so I've cut them roughly into the shape that I want them, and if you look at it from this perspective, like that, you can see that that's like, like a bit of a road down the middle, but not a proper road, like I say, just a pathway through the snow. But it tapers off onto both sides. What I want to do now, before I put all this together, is it's going to look a bit odd as just a rectangle. So I am going to have to do some more trimming of this, because I want this to look more a natural piece. So what I'll do is, looking at the rough side, I'm going to look at the rough size that I need, and then basically I'll cut the board to the shape I want it, and then cut these to match it. Right, so I've got my basic shape, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some cork to stick these bits down, but I'm going to stick them down as they are, so they will overlap, because that's going to, once it's dry, that'll allow me to carve it to make sure it matches the shape. So I'm going to be applying the cork to the board itself. So now that it's dry, and I've just given it a bit of a smooth over, not anything too dramatic, but just to bring it together a bit more. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give it all a coat in a mixture of, I'm going to put a little bit of brown paint in there because I want the base colour down. some Mod Podge, and then I'm going to mix it with this filler, plaster if you like, you know, the stuff that you use for repairing cracks in the wall, and that'll give it, you know, the texture that I want, and it'll also, you know, stiffen this up a little bit. And then all I'm going to do initially is just paint this onto it, but fairly thickly. So it just occurred to me while I'm waiting for this to dry that I really ought to have got one of the features that I wanted to put on this down in place so it can dry with it. So I've cut a small slither out on the front here because that's going to give some added stability. And then I'm going to use this builder's cork to run inside that gap. And I've got some of this, I've only got one piece left actually, I've used it on other projects, but a bit of brick wall, so I'm going to put that in. And then what I'm thinking is I'm just going to have like a little bit of bushing or weeding here, and then taper it off in that direction as well. And that basically what that's giving it is, you know, there's a little bit more activity, possible activity for it, because, you know, like troops can come up behind here, so it could be a bit of cover. And it starts to blend it in and make it more of a picture piece, really. So it you know, it'll work, like I say, as a diorama, but it'll also work as a bit of terrain. There are some other bits that I'm going to be adding, but they really can wait till the very end. But I wanted to get that in place because I wanted to make sure that it's, you know, really firmly based. And that's going to be the best for grabbing it and making sure that that stays solid. Right, I'll bring you back when it's all dry now. Right, so now that this has dried, the first thing I want to do is, you know, create some shrubs for up here from this strip of horsehair. And basically what I want to do is cut it to a more irregular shape. Then when I've done it, before I stick it in place, I want to give it a bit of a spray. Now that's going to be, you know, like a mixture of brown and some of the green showing, and obviously some white, because we need the white down for the base of the snow that we're adding later. But first of all, it's far too uniform like that, so I've now got to make this look like an irregular bush growing along the side, or shrub. Quick change of mind here. Just before I get onto the edges, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this hill a bit to let this sit further into it, and then I can have like a rubble coming down from here where it's churned into the side as it ground to a halt. So I think I'm going to do that before I do that step. And then I can see how it beds in. I'm going to have it. I know it seems counterproductive to do this, but it's a question of seeing it sit right, because if it doesn't sit right, then it doesn't look convincing. These little scissors will do. Rougher it looks, the better. There we go. That's better. Don't look natural at the minute, I know, but it will do, because I shall fill it with the rubble and the ground coming down from where it's ploughed into it. I think what I need is for it to be come to a point. There we go. That's better. Perfect. That's going to look a lot more natural when it's in place. Right, and I think what I'm going to do, because it's ready to do this anyway, is I'm going to fix this in place now, so I can cover anything that shows afterwards. I can cover it up with the snow and the earth. So, unfortunately, I didn't catch the quite a bit of progress that I've made due to the corruption. As you can see, I've stuck the hedges down in place, and the most important thing that you've missed really is I've added icicles. I've weathered the tank, with rust and burn where it's been hit by the bazooka. I've picked out individual bricks in the stonework and then given it an overbrush. And then finally I've painted all the banks white to lay down the base colours. There's no way, unfortunately there was no way that I could rescue it. It said it had transferred, but it hadn't. Very unfortunate. But if you do want to see the rusting process, the damage process for the burned out tank, you could take a look at this video that I did a couple of years ago. I'll try to remember to put the link down in the description. And that shows you basically the same process I followed on the rusting. Oh, and with regard to the articles, basically all I did was I used some clear silicone, which I smeared onto some cling wrap, let it dry, and then cut some slithers out and stuck them on. And then basically what I've been doing since then is, painting up the road another layer. I've painted the snow, the wall itself. I've given that a coat. So, you've not really missed a great deal. It's mainly the tank itself and the rusting that's the bit that you perhaps want to look at. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is laying down some thick mud to emphasise the track, you know, where the tanks move through it. And then I could add a bit of grit to the road, you know, just to give it a bit more feature. But basically I've got to let it dry a bit now. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a bit of a trail of where the tanks just travelled, and I'm going to use some Vallejo thick mud to build up the track marks. First of all, I'm just going to place it down. If you haven't got this, I mean, you could just mix up, you know, whatever paint you use for soil and just add some grit or sand to it and build it up that way. And probably a little bit of glue, because you need something that's going to make it set hard after you've done it. I think I'm about at the end of this, but I think I've got another one. Right, so what I want to do now is use this. And it's just to give the suggestion of the tracks. That'll do. It's just I mean, some of this is gonna, like I say, it's gonna be covered with snow eventually, or some of it is gonna be partly covered, but it at least looks like the ground was churned up as it went across it. And we've got to add a little bit of roughness to the rest of it now. So now I'm going to add the basing glue. Basically, it's just helping to build up a bit more realistic texture on it. There we go. I'm not doing anything amazing, just like I say, I'm just going to add a sprinkle of sand on it. give it more of a texture. You can already see that it's starting to look a little bit more like, you know, a muddy road. And that's before we've even added the colour and the snow effect over the top. So it's worth it. So the first colour I'm going to add is a fairly intense one, but it's the ochre. But obviously we're going to be going over this a fair few times, so don't worry too much about how bright it looks initially, because, you know, we're going to do lots of dry brushing and some over colours, so we can tame that back down. And then ultimately, of course, it will get frosted and the actual final snowfall that we put on it. But we still want this coming through. Obviously, you know, if you're doing anything like this, you can go for any colour of rock that you like. I try to make it at least something that you'd see in that area, but you know, there's nothing to stop you using any colour combination you like, really, for rocks. Right, I think that'll do for the first coat. Really is a question of letting it dry, unfortunately, now, because we don't want to rush it. If you start trying to jump the gun and get onto things quicker than you should, and you'll start pulling up the sand because it ain't had time to bond, and you'll just get wet blending if you don't give this plenty of time to dry. So let me put that to one side, and I'll bring you back soon. Right, the sand has dried a bit more now, so I can gently overcolour it with this mud colour, and I've mixed this up using a little bit of ochre and a tiny bit of ordinary brown, really. In fact, what is it? It's burnt umber. Right, let me carry on doing this. It's a bit boring watching me just paint this bit. I'll let this thoroughly dry and then we'll bring it back for the next stage. Right, so now that this is dry, I'm just going to give this quite a thorough brush over, but I'm not going to be worried if I miss parts because I want the ochre colour to show through. That's better. So as you can see, I've not completely covered it. I'm just basically introducing another colour, but letting that one still come through. And then the rest of it is going to be dry brushing. The next thing that I want to do is to apply a dry brushed frosting to this road. So I'll just grab a brush. Right, I want a fairly stiff brush. Yeah, that one will do. and then get most of it off. There we go. Right, just put all this out of the way, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some tufts down on it now before, you know, I get to add in the snow and things. So let me just clear this away and then I'll bring you back. Right, so I'm going to place some tufts. Now, as I've said before, a lot of these tufts, you know, they've already got like a stickiness on them, but I don't know why, but I always feel better putting a little bit of glue on myself. So, only a little blob. Just want to be sure that they don't come off. I have one here, and then one in the corner there. We will be sprinkling a bit of snow on these as well, but they are already frosted tufts. We'll have another one here, I think. One on the end here. Bring them in a bit closer so you can see them better. Let's just onto that light a little bit. There we go. I don't want to overdo it because I want to keep it relatively simple, because we're going to bathe it in snow anyway. And just a few along that wall there, look. And then the majority of them I've got on here. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let that dry. When it's dried, we'll come back with a white dry brush to this as well, and we'll also start to put a bit of a brushed white paint snow on here before we actually put the powdered snow over it. But I'm just going to let it dry for a bit first, and then I'll bring it back. I just had a thought, being as I'm going to be waiting for this to dry, I was thinking it might be nice to have a few trees on here. And I picked these up at the weekend. They were at the pound shop, would you believe? And I thought, well, I'll pick a few up. I might use them on that project, and I think I will. I was trying to keep it fairly low down, but I think it'd just give it a little something. So what I'm going to do is all they are is twisted wire. So it should be able to push through the plaster layer and into the blue. So basically, I'm Gotta get it where I want it. There we go, look. That's pushed in. Pull it out. Yeah, that's where I want it. So then I'm going to put some of this basing glue on it. And when I push it down there, I'll hold it in place. There we go. That's that one. I think possibly one there. Yeah. Let's put a bit of glue on that one. Right, do I have it there or here? Let's have a look from the front. See how I want this one. I can have it there. I think there. Yeah. I think that's going to look better. Near enough that the barrel goes behind it. Right, turn that back round. Just a question really of looking at what you think looks right. I'm trying to keep it as natural as you can. Obviously the thing I'm having to think about is keeping this balanced as a, you know, I can't make it too delicate because obviously it wants to be a plain piece, but that wouldn't be an issue if you were just purely doing it as a diorama or something. But no, I want this to be an active piece, and that's what that's looking like. I think you'd agree it's brought it to life a little bit. You know, yes, I could put a few more in, but you can quickly start to overcook it really, and it looks too much all of a sudden. So I think I'm going to resist the temptation and just go with that. They're only little trees anyway. You know, you could put, I suppose, if you had this in place, some of the bigger trees behind it that way, and you know, make it more, you know, 3D. But that's what I'd do anyway. I think I'd have some of my full-size trees behind it, and it'd give the look that it's moving off into a forest then. Right, let's let it dry, and then we can have a look at dry brushing this again, and then we can start thinking about adding the snow, and that's what's going to really make the difference, I think. Oh, and I will paint up a little bit of white snow onto the top of the edges and up these trees as well. Right, I'll bring you back soon. Right, so time to add a little bit of the white dry brushing now. I'm going to focus this mainly towards the edges. much in the middle. Right, now it's time to add a little bit of snow to these trees. Don't need to do too much because I am going to sprinkle real snow on it, but a bit on the bushes now as well. You can see how it starts to tie it in together, can't you? Right. That truly is it now. I'm going to need that to dry now before I can apply the glue for the dusting of snow that's going to finish it off. Right, so it's time to start applying this snow now. So what I'm going to do is I'm painting some basing glue onto this side, and I'm going to do one side at once. I don't want to give it time too much to dry out. Go. Right, now we can tackle the other side. think you agree that's really brought it to life. You can feel the cold now. So what I've got to do now is let that thoroughly dry, and then I shall shake off any loose stuff that there is, and then, you know, let it settle, and then eventually I'll give it another little spray of sealing glue, watered down PVA really, but do it in small batches because you don't want to overlog it with water. Right, we'll leave that there, and when we come back we'll see how it's turning out. So here we are, finished. I gave it a bit of a spray with some watered down PVA. That was a little while ago now. I shook off all the excess first, gave it a light spray with the sealant, and then where I needed it I just sprinkled a few little bits of flake back in place, and that's it. The project's complete. I'm pretty pleased with the overall effect, and it, you know, what would have been a wasted tank is now, you know, a really good feature. And what I'm particularly pleased about is how playable the terrain is. You know, I can already see the like I say, all the different options that I've talked about. I mean, look at that for a cover place. I think that'd look good on any snow table really, and you know, you can play it down, just have other vehicles travelling along the road, or you can make it a, you know, a go-to point or a target point, whatever you wanted really. But yeah, overall I'm pretty pleased with that. It's turned out pretty much what I had in mind from the beginning. So anyway, let's take a look at a few photos. So I hope you've found this interesting, and maybe it's inspired you to use something that you've got left over, you know, some kind of damaged vehicle, or it could even be a small damaged building and you'd have to change the layout, but hopefully it's given you some inspiration. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, and if you've got any questions you want to ask, please, you know, feel free to drop them below. You know that I always answer. And if you're new to the channel, and this is like the first video you've come across, you know, please consider subscribing and click that bell so, you know, you'll get to know when the next video drops. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.